Welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. We are live. We're going to be talking about this little cookbook. Well, probably other things later on, but this little cookbook is the start or the main foundation of this live stream. And such a fascinating little cookbook. I really, really like this one. It's one of the ones that I suggest to people if they're looking for something simple to start with. It isn't necessarily any easier to understand and interpret than any other 18th century cookbook, but it is a nice size. It's easy to kind of tackle and understand what the author was really trying to get at in the time period. If you have audio issues, make sure to pop it into the chat because we're kind of running a little deaf. We're running a little deaf on the control board in the back, so just chime in with that. Anyway, this little cookbook was printed in about 1767, I believe. I could check it just to make sure. Yeah, 1767. Not sure exactly who the author is, but the concept behind this whole entire cookbook is that there are people that are struggling to put food on their table. There are people that are struggling to, yeah, that sounds right. They're struggling to find food for their table. They're not cooking the proper things. Their diet is impoverishing them, both in the pocketbook and in their stomach. And so the author here, or the collector of these works, wants to put together this little cookbook, inexpensive. It's not big like, let me see here. I can't reach it. A full Hannah Glass cookbook, which would be, nice and big, intended for somebody who's cooking for large people or large quantity of people, say upper middle class or something like that. That is not what this little cookbook is intended for, although most of the recipes in the center of it are in fact pulled from cookbooks like Hannah Glass. But the author says, hey, what if we put together a small, inexpensive cookbook for poorer families so that they can choose to eat properly and it would make everyone better off? And so it's called Primitive Cookery, or the Kitchen Garden Displayed. Again, they're pointing to, even in this title, the idea that they're cooking simple dishes and things you're going to get out of the garden, not expensive meat from the time period. The price was 1 shilling, probably a lot less expensive than full-size cookbooks. Still, 1 shilling, it's not cheap in the 18th century. So, a poor laborer might earn 5 shillings in a week. So this might have put you back an entire day's wages, but that's, it's still going to be a very important work. Also notice that this is a facsimile copy that we sell at Townsend's. You can probably pop a link into the chat for you. This is printed in the way it was printed in the 18th century. It is a paperback, and the paperback is a very thin paper of the time period, and it's tied. It's like all tied together, and then this paper is just sort of bound on it. So it's a paperback book from the time period. So inexpensive. I'm not sure how many pages we've got here. They're like 80 pages. Perfect little cookbook for someone to work out of who didn't have a lot of resources. Now, whether poor people in England in 1760 could read, I can't answer that question, right? Whether they had enough money to buy this cookbook, again, I can't answer the question. But we do know what the author was trying to achieve. And in fact, this cookbook doesn't start off like most typical cookbooks. It doesn't have an introduction, and it doesn't start off with recipes right away. So here's the little frontispiece, which, modern books should have frontispieces. They really don't.
There are a few that are kind of like, maybe like fantasy that has a historical fiction setting, right, that will still do front pieces.
But what's going on here? So frontispiece, containing a collection of recipes for preparing a great variety of cheap, healthful, palatable, that's important, palatable dishes without either fish, flesh, or fowl. You got to have that alliteration in there, or else what's the point, right? Also, to make diverse sorts of wholesome and pleasant liquors from herbs, fruits, and flowers, the growth of England with their physical virtues. So it's not just simple food recipes, but they want to do basically healthful drinks at the same time, to which is added at the very end of this cookbook a bill of fare. A little bit more than a typical bill of fare here. They really go into explanation. A bill of fare of 70 dishes, which will not cost above 2 pence apiece. So very inexpensive dishes. So not just, hey, here are the recipes, but here are even some ideas about what you can make for full meals. And then I love this part. It's got like a proverb here. It doesn't even quote the particular proverb, but it just says, this is a proverb. Be not amongst wine bibbers, amongst riotous eaters of flesh, for the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty. Again, it's interesting that while a lot of people point to this cookbook as a vegetarian cookbook, if we do, I mean, most vegetarianism today is pointed toward two directions. Either we're a vegetarian specifically because of health reasons. We think vegetables are healthier than meat. Or ethical considerations. We don't want to hurt animals. Or, possibly there's going to be some intersection there. This is a little bit more on the moral compass of don't be a glutton, and this food is probably better for you. So again, a combination, but a little bit different than the modern take on that whole concept. So right after the frontispiece, we go immediately to Dr. Lobb's advice for the poor with regards to diet. And I immediately said, okay, I'm opening up a cookbook in the 18th century. I go one page past the frontispiece and I immediately get an essay by Dr. Lobb. And I'm thinking, okay, Dr. Lobb must have been very important or known in the 18th century. If you don't need any introduction to Dr. Lobb at all, just boom, here's Dr. Lobb, and he's gonna lay down the law for you. So I did a real quick check here. Just jumped on the magic box and said, who's Dr. Lobb? Theophilus Lobb. Great first name.
Right, that should come back into style.
Not too many people are called Theophilus today. I think they ought to be, But Theo, Theophilus Lobb, 1678 to 1763. That means he lived to be a pretty good age. So, he was really educated for the ministry as a nonconformist. So he's not with Church of England. He's one of those rebels. He does begin, even though he's trained for the ministry, he also does physic. He studies physic, and that's a pretty common kind of combination that you'll get in that time period. A lot of people that had religious backgrounds also studied for physical physicians. And he does sort of, he gets called to a congregation. Doesn't really work out for him. They apparently think he's really not that great. And so he does move on and really concentrate on medicine, which he gets an MD by 1729. And he does get, he tries to be a pastor there in the 1730s, doesn't work out. So he really kind of goes to medicine by 1740. And he has a patent for particular medicines by 1762. So this is about the time here. So he is probably somewhat well known in the time period. He immediately, in his little piece here, he's talking about as we apprehend it, as we apprehend it, It may be of great service to the poor at all times to direct them to the cheapest and most healthful and pleasant way of diet. Wherever provisions are scarce and the prices of them high, I advise the poor, therefore, to observe the following general rules: that they feed much more on pulse, so grains. They turned our pyramid upside down, and grains are at the bottom now. But at the time period, grains. He's thinking grains are important. Also, let's see, and other vegetable aliments or foods, and much less eating upon the animal kind. So less meat. They should drink no more strong liquors of any sort than is needful to the health and strength of their bodies. Many people in the time period, and Benjamin Franklin talked about it, would think that to be a strong person, you had to drink strong liquors or strong beers. And again, here he is talking against that concept. It is a mistaken notion that drinking strong liquors is necessary for people who work hard to keep up their strength, that they may drink some moderately to keep their spirits cheerful while they're at labor, but the spirits of strong liquors soon pass through their bodies and are gone. And so he goes on and on there. I like that. It's like, you might need some just to, keep your countenance, but for strength of body, no, it's not going to work out. The poor, in observing the directions mentioned here, will every week be at much less expense, because pulse and other vegetables are much cheaper than flesh, and because by drinking no more strong liquors than is really needful, money will be saved for better uses. Well, I think he's probably got something there. He goes on to talk about Daniel in the Bible, where he goes into captivity, and he asks that they eat regular just grains and vegetables instead of the meat that is available in the household, and they go ahead and allow that. And of course, only if it was healthful. And of course, Daniel and his friends are all strong and healthy. So he points to that example. So we have a big biblical example of that. He also gives us a biblical example of Samson, saying, look, he didn't drink liquors and he was super strong, so you don't need liquors. Then he goes on to give us examples of cattle and horses. He says, look at those oxen and horses are super strong. They do all this work and they're not eating meat. But we don't eat grass. So I'm not sure if that's really the best example. Anyway. So we get this multiple, and this whole section where he's talking is really good. As to bread, besides the common household bread of this town, in times of scarcity, bread may be made of barley meal or of rye or of both mixed, and the dough made up in the form of our common loaves or into cakes and baked on plates of iron like our muffins and oat cakes. So we get some great explanation here of you too can make inexpensive breads, and you can make them out of these other kinds of grains. So we have those examples happening, especially in the 1740s, when there was a great problem with the wheat harvest, and other grains came in to serve. The bakers were specific on using those. He does say you can inexpensively use animal foods, specifically the inexpensive cuts. So basically the junk stuff. Shins, necks, trotters, so feet. And you can use those and put them into, I like this, he says, cut them into pieces as big as nutmegs.
The proper measurement for all
it's
things.
Like, about this, the size of a nutmeg. You could say the size of a hen's egg, that's a little too big. Size of a nutmeg, that's the size you want. And then you stew these little pieces in 2 quarts of pea soup, or to get flesh in without having an expensive cut. He gives advice about, and I think this is great. He says, I should advise all persons to conclude their dinner with eating eating the quantity of a nutmeg or two of Old Cheshire or double Gloucestershire cheese on account of its efficacy against flatulence.
I think he just liked those cheeses.
Well, no. No, he goes on. I speak from my own experience, who seldom eat of cheese at any other time. See? He caught you right there. He knew you were going to like, oh, he's just a cheese guy.
He's prepared. Probably other people have brought that up.
Well, he's like Paul, he's ready for every argument. As for the children of the poor, I advise that sometimes their breakfast be on dry bread, and then their drink to be tea made with the bark of elm and milk with it, especially if they have any scorbutic itching humors. I'm not sure exactly what a scorbutic itching humor is, but that kid probably has one. Their suppers should be early and sometimes on dry bread with baked pears and apples. Poor kids. They're not.
That's why I popped that kid up. I thought he looked pretty unhappy about his.
Pretty scorbutic. He does recommend porter against some other kinds of drinks for people. That's pretty common in the 18th century. And he's also suggesting, he brings up the example of people eating in the East Indies and the kinds of diets they were having. So even that gets brought up with sailors when they talk about banyan days, actually referring to the idea of meatless meals served on board ship, and they're reflecting back to people eating in the East Indies and having meatless meals. So very interesting kind of connections there. Do we have anything we need to jump in with?
Yes, I have a super chat here. So this person, Mike Howell, says, how much money would it take to get a short film of the Red-Headed League by Arthur C. Doyle, starring John as Holmes and Michael Dragoo as Watson? Doesn't that sound exciting? I mean...
It does. It does.
And I like the concept of a short film, right? They're like, you can pack a lot in. And...
our English accents would suck. We just do it without them.
I wonder if you could, how a lot of times with Shakespeare, right? They'll change the setting, right? Well, we could make it, we could change the setting.
Yeah, we could just change the setting to, say, Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Now, I don't know the answer to the question, how much money it would take to do a high-class production.
No, it wouldn't be high class.
But
what if we
how
did
much
it?
would it take to do a low-class production?
Lauren, it's got Michael Dragoo in it.
It might be easier to, do a Ryan or something.
Scheduling, yeah. I'm sure would be.
I'm not sure if, Michael would be up for a project like that. But we'll keep it in mind. I'd have to read it. I enjoy Sherlock Holmes things. I really love that kind of stuff. So it would be a thing. Anyway, anything else?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
So I thought we would talk about the recipes a little bit. And first, let's talk a bit about all the videos that we have done out of this cookbook. And I'm not sure, there could be more. And because the, recipe books will share recipes. So whether we talked about this specifically, a recipe coming specifically out of this cookbook or not, it may show up in this cookbook. But these are probably pretty close to coming out of this one. So we did potato pancakes. And I think we fought that one for a while. I like potato pancakes physically. I like the video. It's a little bit more of a hard sell. I think we did that one after Thanksgiving. We tried to kind of theme it on leftovers. And you know what doesn't sell on YouTube? Leftovers. No one cares about leftovers. Everybody just Why don't we just throw it in the trash and get over with it? You know, it's just like, I want real food. I don't want leftovers.
Well,
At least you don't want a video
I
about
wonder if people have this like way of doing leftovers. Like when you have leftovers of Chinese food, like you just toss it all together, or Thanksgiving
Heat it up,
leftovers, right?
eat it, be done.
Right? And you're like, and it tastes pretty good. It's not bad.
So we did potato pancakes. We did peas porridge. Yes. There was a video about 2 vegetarian desserts. I don't recall.
That's there's a little snowball. I think it's an apple dumpling and a snowball.
Okay, apple dumpling and a snowball, which is a rice pudding boiled. Then there was onion pie. That one, have we done that more than once?
I think so. I think Ryan did one pretty recently.
Right.
Yeah.
So the original onion pie one, and then maybe a redo by Ryan where he went at it with a different direction. Excellent recipe. Many people talk about that particular recipe.
Yes, they do.
Because it's really good. Now it's not like you think onion pie, it's like a pie and it's just like heaping with onions. Now that might be really good if they were, sauteed a lot with butter and everything. But still a little over the top, like you don't want that as a pie. It's onions, but it's got a lot of potatoes in it and eggs, stuff like that. So it's actually very good. Of course, can you go wrong with a pie? I mean, it's like frying something.
Have you ever had a pie where you're like, it's not?
Yeah, it's like
a homemade pie that was
exactly.
Not great, and it's just you want to make something yummy. Put
it's
it
just
in
a good way, right? A cabbage farce. That's where you have a cabbage, you take out the center and you put like meat in it, and then we boiled it, I think. You could probably bake it and do the same kind of thing. It's really good. Apple fritters is it like the first? Yeah, it's like the first real recipe in the cookbook. Apple fritters. Can't go wrong with apple fritters. Apple fritters. When we did the Poor Man's Feast a couple of years ago, we started off in January, just hit the year running with Poor Man's Feast, and that episode just blew up, and that was all recipes out of this. And the whole concept, really, of that episode was fun and interesting. It had some different things going on with it. Like the bean recipe was very interesting because you do not find very many. So we think of like baked beans, and that they just don't show up in the cookbooks very often. And it was kind of hiding in here. I didn't realize what it was until I really kind of dug into it. The Windsor beans, I think they're basically fava beans. And I was surprised by how good it was. Norfolk dumplings. And that's a simple dumpling, but okay, saying simple dumpling is like being redundant. But again, Norfolk dumplings were in here, similar to just hard dumplings. An herb pottage. Again, this cookbook is specific about the idea of herb pottages, and if I can find a reading specifically about that, I will. Potatoes for the poor, that episode, excellent. Fried potatoes, yes. Good, yes. I think we made one from the recipe called To Make Scotch Barley Broth. I just can't remember what we called it. We change titles sometimes. That's the way you search for them in the studio side of YouTube that you don't see. And when we change the titles a bunch, they can get lost. And I was like, I don't even know what did we call that episode? So not sure about that. Boiled dumplings. So we did a bunch of recipes from this particular cookbook, and it is that good. So let's see here. And I was hoping to find that pottage soup section where he talks about it. Let me see if I can find it real quick here. Dinners, soups. So a lot of times we think of some of these herbs as being just a little flavor addition. It's like, well, you pop this little thing in there and you get a little bit of an herby pop of a flavor in a soup. But here we really are using herbs in a different way, in the much older sense of making an herb pottage. And I don't know if I can find it, but the whole concept here is that the herbs are the main part, that they're the strong and good part of the meal. And I probably can't find it. But what if we made a pottage, a soup basically, and the herbs that we can find just anywhere, in the fields and ditches of the 18th century. I wouldn't go getting your herbs from ditches today, but the herbs in the ditches of the 18th century, you could get your meal just basically right there. And there was enough, sustenance there, if it's cooked properly, that it is a healthy meal. It isn't just I cooked some water and I flavored it with a little bit of, whatever. But, like having a heavy spinach soup or something. When we've done the episodes with stinging nettles, it's a very good example of that. The stinging nettles have a tremendous quantity of nutrition for them. You're not just putting it in there because it's a little bit of a green, or it might give you an interesting flavor, but you're putting it in there because it is a major portion of the meal and you will get lots of nourishment from them. So that's one of the things that we get kind of pointed out to us. Let me see if I can find my spot here in my workings. Yeah. And some of these pottages also he mentions as particularly good medicinally. Things like, it's good for your lungs, it cleans your blood. Not sure if I want something to clean my blood, but apparently that's what's going on here. We also get the use of some things that we wouldn't recognize today, especially in North America and maybe around the world. We've got chardoons, which are described as a wild thistle from the hedges.
Artichoke.
Yeah, like miniature artichokes or primitive artichokes. So if you've ever, seen artichokes, they're giant, but really they are just a huge thistle. And we're trying to get to that center part, that sort of immature part, and it's really a great flavor down in the center of it. You've got to do all this work to get there, but work that I'm not sure whether it's worth it. But chardoons might be an experiment. And also there are recipes here for skirrets. So it sounds like carrot, right? Skirret, carrot. And they're kind of like that. Maybe a cross between a parsnip and a carrot. We don't really have them today. They were like little skinny and white carrot things. Probably taste horrible. Or maybe really good and we just don't know it.
Maybe they don't they don't transport well.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Which is odd because most roots vegetables do. So you're
Exactly.
like, well, where'd they go?
So we don't know about skirrets that much, but so be it. They have a watercress pottage. That's going to be... There's a reason why the word pottage has left our vocabulary.
It doesn't sound appetizing. But
Soup we can get to, but
stew.
Pottage is like, you want me to eat what? So we start off this guy with apple recipes, apple fritters, apple phrases, Pupton, or like a paste of apples, whole baked apples, which actually works out really well, especially if you pull the core out, say, drop some brown sugar in the middle of it. Apple puddings, apple pies, apple dumplings. And the apple pie is probably pulled from Hannah Glass, and it probably isn't that far from an apple pie today. We really only make apple pie one way. They made apple pies multiple ways in the 18th century. Let's see, make a puff paste, lay some around the sides of the dish. So instead of just a full layer, they would just put it around the outside. Quarter your apples, take out the core, lay in a row of apples thick, throw in half of the sugar that you have set aside for your pie, a little lemon peel, throw over and squeeze a little lemon over them, a few cloves, I'm not sure about that, The rest of your apples, the rest of your sugar, sweeten your palate, some more lemon, some peel. No, boil the peel of the apples and the cores in some water with a blade of mace. Strain it, boil that syrup with a little sugar, and then you fill it. So you're getting that apple flavor, and you're not, think about this, you're not throwing anything out. You used the peel, you used the core, you're gonna get it all stripped out of those apples. Oh gosh, excuse me. And if you want to put a little quince or marmalade there, and then you boil that pie, or you bake that pie. Sounds like, pretty close to a apple pie today. Probably better than your typical apple pie today. He uses a whole section of a couple apricot things, artichokes. Again, it doesn't, today you wouldn't put artichokes in a poor person's, cookbook. I don't know why. Maybe they were cheap then. Asparagus, and then there's this to dress Windsor beans, which was used in that one episode. An omelet of beans, or as it says here, an amulet. So we would call it an omelet. Beans, broccoli, cabbages, celery. There's our chardoons, multiple chardoon recipes, cauliflower. We get a fricassee of mushrooms. Good. There's our onion pie, onion soup, ragu of onions. Really what I wanted to get to was potatoes, though. Great giant section on potatoes. Before we talk about potatoes, though, every week we try to get to the brand new and renewing YouTube members. And we've got Michael Hill, Reese Van Bardwick, Apocalypse, like apocalypse, except spelled in an interesting way. EA Precision Builders. Thank you, EA Precision Builders, for your support. Aaron Varner, Aqua Gardener 1985, Vati OW. I'm not sure how to say that properly, but Lee McMorris and Joshua Matter are new and renewing YouTube folks for this week. I didn't see any brand new Patreon folks, but I do want to thank all those people who support us with Patreon month after month after month. You help us talk about the 18th century constantly. I don't know if that's a service to humanity or not, but you are making it happen. What do you think, Lauren?
I'm sorry, I got distracted because someone asked a question. Max Sarkul sends in 5 Townsend's gift memberships.
Thank you so much.
And I was checking to see if people had questions. My chat jumped on me. I don't think so. I haven't noticed any questions.
Love it when Dragoo makes a ragu.
People have been reporting in about their pie experiences, which really is just making me want to make pies.
Yeah.
Any opportunity,
Pretty
really.
soon, all pies all day. You can have breakfast pie, regular meal pie, and dessert pie, and cheese pie at the end, which is what this guy would suggest. Just a nutmeg-sized cheese pie. So, potatoes. Some people, when they are boiled, have a sauce ready to pour over them. I hope so. Made of butter, salt, and pepper. And others use gravy sauce. Others, ketchup. And some of them are boiled with only pepper and salt. Some cut the large ones in slices and fry them with onions, and others stew them with salt, pepper, ale, or water. I don't know, stew them potatoes with ale. It is common also to boil them first and then peel them and lay them in the dripping pan under roasted meat. Another way used in Wales is to bake them with herrings mixed with a layer of pepper and vinegar, salt, sweet herbs, and water. And also they cut mutton into slices and lay them in the pan, and then potatoes and spices. The Irish have several ways of eating them. The poorer sort eat them with salt only after they are boiled, and others with butter and salt, but most with milk and sugar. So potatoes with milk and sugar. Have you experienced potatoes boiled with milk and sugar?
No, but I mean, you do tons of other stuff that kind of has a mild flavor like that. So,
Right.
you know, wheat, oatmeal, that sort of thing. And so, like, if you think of oatmeal and you're like, well, there's savory versions
Right.
and there's sweet versions,
right.
and potatoes are very mild, so you're like, why not?
So sweet
But I've never had it.
potatoes sweetened, right? How about this? Another way is to mash boiled potatoes and then put them into bacon or pork broth with spice and pepper and sweet herbs, which is something like pea soup. Mashed potatoes, sweet herbs, beaten small, spice, butter, and salt. He's got lots of potato recipes, let me just tell you. Mash them after they are boiled, and then with a mixture of other ingredients, they make a composition for skin puddings. So you basically like put them in sausage skins. Potatoes boiled, pulped, and mixed with milk and salt into a dough that makes good cakes to bake. And then he moves right down into making potato bread. So there are multiple episodes or we've done a episode that talked about wheat shortages and potato bread. Here's a potato pudding. Fry potatoes to make potatoes into fritters, to make a potato pie, to make biscuits of potatoes. It's like, why don't we just do a potato cookbook?
Okay, you want to break for a second? Okay, so here's a super chat from BLWRZ. Thanks for the great channel. My understanding is that seafood was not seen as a potential luxury in the 18th century, but now it can be. Why is that?
Why is that? Super good, interesting question. We've covered that somewhat. There's that one episode where we talked about lobsters, and I'm wearing the striped suit, and the idea, we talked about that occasionally, and it's one of those, is it really a myth, or about the idea of either prisoners or other people in lowly situations complaining about being fed lobsters too many times, right? It's like you can only feed them 3 times a week with lobster, no more than that. And there have been times when things like lobster and other parts of seafood were considered sort of a lowly dish, inexpensive. Probably because during those times, fish was much more prolific and bountiful, so much so that it was used as a poor person's food.
And I do think that for any food, if you eat it all the time, you too get tired of it pretty fast.
Right. So yeah, if that's in the time period, people would say, right, it's like fishermen don't like fish because the cheapest thing they have available to them, they eat it all the time. It's like, the last thing I want is another fish. So that's kind of what I have to say about that, I guess.
So this is a suggestion from Aaron O'Hara. In the spring, could you consider making more videos on recipes made with foraged ingredients, maybe some recipes for common people and some for the wealthy using hard-to-find, sought-after ingredients?
Right. Well, how do I find them? There you go. Some things are prolific in areas where I don't really have access to them, like ramps. Good, thing. And most of the cookbooks are not geared toward that. So, I mean, sometimes we get hints, and you have to really know how to look at it. I mean, he even says it here. Things like, we're going to make a pottage of watercress. We don't think of watercress as necessarily a foraged item. Do we think of watercress as a foraged item?
Sometimes, well, I don't, because we don't forage it here. As far as I know, it doesn't grow around here unless you are purposefully trying to grow it. So there are things I think of as foraged, because they grow around here. But here we are in North America. So for our time period, they're not writing about the foraged. So probably in the 19th century, you get people writing about foraged stuff. So
even then, the problem is cookbooks are generally written for richer people.
Yep.
And they don't think the idea of foraging for food is a good idea. I mean, maybe game.
Every
right?
once in a while, we'll run across a journal entry that has it, but it's the research part that's the hardest thing to do on these ones. Like it's such a great.
So in a sense, we've done some of those. I've done a couple of spring soup episodes where you'll find where I talk about using spring foraged things, and specifically using them with portable soup and ship's biscuits possibly, or hard dumplings. Both of those things they all go together. So we have done some like that, and hopefully we can find some links for you on that.
Somebody was saying, would love to see more blacksmithing and apothecary content while we're throwing things into the well. And somebody was talking about how they were very interested in the leftovers concept and kind of philosophy behind that.
Right.
And that it would be a great episode idea. And I do think that would be great, but I don't know that I've ever run across someone talking about, like, again, it's the research part.
You got to read between the lines.
Right? You got to find someone who, like, where's the essay? The essay about leftovers.
Well, there may be one.
And you never know. Sometimes you run across one and that idea you had in the back of your head, you're like, now's the perfect time.
See, that's harder research to do. It's easy to say, I need to, show me all the cookbooks, right? And it's harder to say, show me all the essays on, eating leftovers. Even though they actually might be there.
Yeah, they could well be. Here is a super chat from Speed and Style Tony. Does this book talk about the cheap spices to use instead of the expensive nutmeg?
I believe that that if we did dig, he specifically mentions the cheap spices in the time period are salt and pepper. Yeah, it's like pepper can be expensive, but you don't need very much of it, right, to give you the zing. So that's what's good about it. And the classic inexpensive spice in the time period, which is ginger. Now, he may not point it out here and say, oh, I'm using ginger here because it's the cheap spice. But that is, in fact, what you'll find in some of these specific recipes, where if there's a spice and it's not salt and pepper, it might be ginger. And you will find nutmeg in here, but it's only because the recipe is being pulled from Hannah Glass. He didn't bother to edit it or change it in any way. He's expecting the person who's cooking from it to say, oh yeah, this doesn't actually need nutmeg, that's expensive. So he's expecting the cook to adjust on the fly.
Somebody was asking, and I don't remember if we answered this in the potato episode, what your favorite potato recipe is.
Favorite potato recipe? I like them all.
There is no bad potato.
Yes, you can't go wrong with a potato recipe.
So they were talking about some of the forged videos you've done, and Derek was saying, I've probably watched the morel mushrooms episode 300 times. I don't think I've heard John rave about a food more than he did in that video.
Yeah, and that was an interesting episode. It was actually a difficult week, and it was one of those, I had to use the episode to cheer myself up.
And nothing more cheering than a good fried morel mushroom.
That's right. A good example. I know I did probably multiple episodes with stinging nettles, and certainly talked about them, stinging nettles in a soup, stinging nettles in a pie. Because I think we did like a spinach pie with the eggs that we used nettles instead.
Yeah.
Or am I imagining it?
No, I think you did that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The difficulty is after 600 cooking episodes, you're like, what did I do? And I just spun by this. It's got a stewed spinach and egg recipe. I mean, imagine that. You just stuff it in a pie. Ta-da! You're there. I wanted to get to this, the end here. So here's the whole chapter here at page 50, a number of little dishes, cheap and good. And we've got collops and eggs, which is basically bacon and eggs. We've got to make Scotch barley broth. We have a Devonshire squab pie. Again, we think of squab as an inexpensive thing, but you steal somebody's baby pigeons. Egg soup, rice milk, buttered wheat, fermenty, hasty puddings. We talked about hasty puddings recently. Hasty pudding, fritters, a pretty dish of eggs. But if we get right to the back here, we get to the section called, come on, I can find it. It's called A Bill of Fare, 70 Pretty Little Dishes Which Will Not Stand in 2p charge. I like the way they come up with sentences that we would never put together in that way. It's like, why don't you say 20 dishes that cost less than 2p? Nope. Anyway, so it just lists them. Like, 1, take some oatmeal and water and make it into gruel over a clean fire. This all people know how to make, and so it needs no direction.
Thanks.
Well, you know what? If it didn't need any direction, it probably didn't need to be here. We know that we can eat oatmeal. Hello. But, hey, it's part of a cookbook. Come on. Also, you may take good wheat flour and water and make it into a pap and put bread into it and then season it with salt. Also, bread in a glass of water. With any of these things, a man may live very well. And so he does that over and over again. So, here's more gruel, here's eggs boiled in the shell, eaten with bread. And, sometimes it's like, that's good, that's the advice we need. It's like, oh, I'm really poor, I can't eat. Well, it's like, guess what? There's something you can eat cheap, right? And that's what this book does at the end here. Eggs and boiled spinach, butter to eat with bread. Sometimes he talks about them having particular medicinal properties. Water and oatmeal made into a gruel, seasoned with salt and an egg, beaten up and put into it with bread and butter creates good blood and frees the passages of windiness and griping pains. Frees the passages of windiness. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not going to explain that. We have a pint of ale just boiled and an egg beat and put into it, well stirred, like egg drop soup with ale instead, right? Taken off the fire, eat it with bread, sweeten it with sugar. Some may like that better. Okay. Okay. He goes into these things that may be foraged, right? Balm, mint, spinach boiled together, endive, parsley, spinach boiled together, collarworts, cabbage, cauliflower boiled, eaten with butter, asparagus. My mother used to forage for asparagus. And it just goes on and on. We have 70 of those things. Some of them are as simple as, guess what? Apple dumplings are a good meal. Or apple pie. Here's Bonnie Clabber eaten with bread. We don't talk about that much anymore. Charvel, watercresses, watercress pottage eaten with bread and butter and salt. Cleans the blood. There's balm, there's mint. So yeah, basically things that we wouldn't possibly not recognize that they were foraging for in the time period. So really good one. I thought this was fun. It says here the author's approach is like a master weaver who creates a royal tapestry using only common hemp. So you could make this expensive, tapestry with silks and everything, but you could make something as strong and as beautiful out of a simple kind of fiber.
I have a super chat here, and it has a question. So this is Solaris, and it is: did they have what we would call power bars and fruit bars and such?
I don't think I have any. We talked about the concept of pemmican being a meat power bar, right? Meat and fat power bar, in a sense. Fruit bars.
When you did the candy episode,
Yes.
did it kind of have the fruit leather in it?
Yeah, it had fruit leather type things in it, and some that were like thickened. Imagine a really thick jam that was as a candy. So there were some things like that. They might have thought of them as more confectionery, but I mean, in a sense, we do too.
Sure.
We call it fruit leather. Yeah, it's like leather. Yeah, it's candy. Come on, just
Sure is.
don't lie to me about that. It's fruit. Yeah, right. Are we there?
I think so. I was watching to see if I missed any more questions. I don't see any. I think we're all cut up.
An amazing cookbook. I really recommend it to folks. It is one of those go-tos. This American Cookery and Hannah Glass, or The Art of Cookery, kind of as a little combo, would get you well into the way. Now, understand that all these cookbooks, if you're getting a facsimile cookbook, they're printed with the weird F's and S's and all that good stuff. It's one of those things I don't even notice anymore. You just, you dive in and people are like, I can't read that. And I'm thinking, I guess it is weird. I never really noticed that. But it's one of those. A lot of people ask about the concept of, why haven't you done a cookbook? And we may still do that. But one of the reasons is because I think the cookbooks as they stand in the time period are so strong that I don't know that it's hard for me to know what I'm adding to the conversation that isn't already here. Now, truly, they probably need editing in a sense. It's like gathering and editing, and there is part of that understanding it, that it's hard for me to. It's like what's not understandable, And then of course I read that sentence where a bill of fare of 70 pretty little dishes which will not stand in 2 pence charge.
And you're like, never mind. There's some translation.
Okay,
needed.
it needs interpreting. Sorry. It's tremendous to have everyone out there and helping in what we do with the kind of support that it takes here to do this channel and to continue to just do it and do it and do it. But I know that there are people out there who are interested in what's happening here with food in the 18th century. It does speak to what's happening in food today. So it's interesting that people have been eating for thousands and thousands of years, and still we have a lot to learn. And learning about how people ate in times past, how people are eating today, how the strange political aspects of food, which you wouldn't think there would be any, but and the medicinal aspects of food. There is so much for us to continue to understand and to learn from and get better at with food. So it's always a lot of fun, and there's always something more to learn. Thank you for your amazing support for what we do. Just watching and commenting in a chat situation like this, the folks who support us with Super Chat, the folks who support us in memberships and in Patreon, or purchasing merch on our website, or products to make things in a period manner. All these things make massive quantities of difference, not just to me, but to all the people that we work for, and it causes this channel to continue to grow and reach literally millions of people. Is that just the weirdest thing ever? That there's some guy and he talks about 18th century food, and it ends up interacting with millions of people around the world. I wouldn't have ever guessed it. Thank you so much for being here today, and thanks for watching.